Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our London webinar for Google Pay. I'm over here in the London office. I'm joined by Natasha and Jan and Dom as well. And we're also joined by Tony over in the New York office. So let's jump straight in. To introduce myself, I'm Rowan. I'm a developer advocate for the web and Chrome. My team focuses on e-commerce, so obviously payments is very interesting to me. And hopefully it is also interesting to you. Now, if you have got this link from a contact at Google, then they are also your link for following up after this. We're on the live stream. If you've never been on a live stream before, then you should see on the right-hand side, you have a place where you can chat. So Natasha is watching that chat for your questions. And towards the end of this, she'll be relaying those to myself and Tony, and we will be doing our best to answer those for you. Let's jump in then with an agenda for the session today. We're going to start with an overview of Google Pay, kind of a bit of history and where we are now. We'll take a look at some of the design considerations, both inside of Google Pay and for your own checkout. Then we're going to take a look at the implementation on web. And once we've done a quick run through of that, we're going to go into more detail and actually just go into some code and a live demo. And finally, we'll wrap up with Q&A at the end. Okay, to set the scene a little bit for you, to show you how much of a priority this is for Google, here's a quote from Sundar, our CEO, from our most recent earnings call. And inside of there, you can see that he's really talking about the importance as we move from just being a search engine that answers questions to really providing complete actions for users. And of course, that includes transactions. And a big part of that is making them frictionless across all of Google's properties. Now, Google has the ability to reach users at a tremendous scale. We've got over 1 billion users on Chrome and over 2 billion Android users. But previously with Android Pay, we weren't really tapping into all of this scale. We were only surfacing tokenized credentials, and that was just on Android devices as well. Now, what we're trying to do with Google Pay is really take advantage of that massive scale. And this is how it works. So anytime a Google user transacts on a Google property and has chosen to save their payment details with us, and that means on properties like YouTube, Chrome, the Play Store, and so on, we are now using Google Pay to tap into that collection of cards on file and also make them available to partner applications and partner sites to create those transactions. That means we've really increased the scale of our payment product to now include hundreds of millions of users who are ready to pay right now. And we've also really focused on making it easy to use. That means if a user has a card on file with Google, they're ready to go. They can use Google Pay to pay for things. Now, to give you some context, this is a little different from how it used to be, where maybe you'd have to download the Android Pay app, or maybe you'd actually have to actively re-add that card back to your account to make the payment. So now, stress that again, nothing is required on behalf of the user. If they have a payment method saved, then they can go onto one of these properties and they can start making transactions. And to give you an idea, one of the phrases we have here is eating our own dog food. So we've actually started really migrating all of our first-party products to use Google Pay as a touch point. So that means when you're going through YouTube, when you're going through the Play Store, you're going to start seeing the Google Pay brand there. So we're really looking to raise the consumer awareness for this. And it's not just surfacing that on sites and apps and inside of Google properties. We're trying to make Google Pay available on all the surfaces where users interact with Google. That means if they're using a Google Home, then they're using Google Pay to complete those transactions. If they're using NFC for tap and pay in stores, then it's Google Pay that they're seeing on their phone when it makes that payment. We're really focused on creating this delightful, simple experience for users across all of these surfaces where they interact with us. And as well, it's not just about making it easier for our customers. We want to make it easier for you, our partners and developers, to actually build these scalable solutions. So Google Pay means that we are now available with a single API integration across web and a very similar API for Android globally in over 60 countries. And that web API is across desktop and mobile web and is supported in all the major browsers, so Chrome, Firefox, and Safari. And again, this is the change from what we used to have before with Android Pay, where the user was having to download the app, rely on adding that card as well. Okay, so if that's the scene set, let's talk a little bit more about what it means to use Google Pay on an online store. Now, if we look at the problem, we can see that checkout is really a huge pain point for our partners. As you can see here, 69% of users will abandon a site or an app because there are too many steps in purchase. So if we can improve that by just a few percentage points, then that really represents a pretty big win for transaction volume. And let's take a look in a bit more detail about where those problems come in. So here's a kind of average checkout example. You can see the multiple steps, all of the decisions that we're asking the user to make, and a lot of people will just abandon this with the intention to maybe come back later, but generally they don't. One of my personal favorites on this is when you're trying to enter your credit card number and someone hasn't actually marked up the field as a number correctly, so you're trying to convince your phone not to keep swapping back to the letter keyboard and so on. So on average, when we look at something like this, to complete a checkout, it can take the user about 120 taps or clicks, which is like 3 to 5 minutes of their time to complete that flow. So you can start to see why people are dropping out of experiences like this. Now with Google Pay, when I was talking about those saved payment methods before, it's not just the payment method that we're trying to do here. We're really trying to improve the checkout experience and provide that consistent, seamless experience to the users. So you can see that when I come in with this, I'm selecting my shipping method, and when I tap something like the GPay button, it's popping up with the saved payment methods I have. But inside of Google Pay, you can also ask for additional details like the user's email address, their telephone number, their shipping address, their billing address. So we really provide a uniform and consistent method for getting that entire checkout experience into just one set of UIs. You can also see in this screenshot, if you look closely, that you can link your PayPal account into the Google Pay app as well. So again, we're really trying to streamline this to make it a single experience for users. Okay, so to recap on that, this is all about that consistent and seamless experience for users. That means if the user is logged in and has a card on file with us, then they are ready to pay with Google Pay. We have one API that enables that across web, very similar API that enables that across app. And also, it is incredibly simple. I know we have a bullet point here that says integrate in just a few days, which everybody always says that about their product, but we have some partners who have actually done this. It is one developer week of time that it has taken certain partners to implement. We're available globally. The checkout, we are really streamlining this, so it is becoming just a few clicks to get through. And we also really want to state that we're fully invested in this. We're moving all of our first-party products to be Google Pay, so you can expect this brand to be future-proof and be a good investment for the long term. And finally, we don't charge any fees on the transaction in this, so implementing this is no additional cost beyond the development investment. Okay, and a few examples of people who have got this out in the wild already. These are a few, this is a bit American-centric on this side, but you can see a couple of EMEA partners in here as well. So Airbnb is one of them, Hotel Tonight and Kayak. I think as well, Just Eat does this, who I use more than I would like to admit. And Google Pay makes that a little bit too easy. Okay, and a few things that our partners are saying about this as well. So you can see that customers who are using Google Pay here were 65% more likely to complete their booking flow. We've also found as well that the ease of Google Pay means that users are coming back and they're actually using more inside of the app, so their order amount is increasing. And you can see as well that it's much easier for new users to come into the app. There's no more additional adding of a payment method, saving of a payment method, inputting your address again. All of that is saved, so it's just a couple taps for a new user to be acquired and get their transaction in with the partner. Okay. Let's go into what's involved in doing that integration on the web then. So to give you a very lightweight idea, it's a three-stage process. Look at the design, as in how Google Pay is going to fit into your existing checkout. Do the implementation, which is really two main steps. You check if they're ready to pay, i.e. is Google Pay supported on that platform for the payment methods you care about? And then you load the payment data, and that's where you're expressing your configuration and the transaction that you want to do. And then finally, when the user has completed that, you use your payment processor to process the transaction. Okay, let's look at design first then. One of the things we recommend is to display Google early and prominently as a payment method. This is because the user has the recognition that when they start the process, that they are going to be able to get to the end and just tap the button to complete the transaction. You also want to make sure that you are displaying all of the relevant purchase information, the price, the items and services, before confirming the transaction. Because as we'll see, what the Google Pay interface shows the user is the information they are sharing with you, not the transaction that you are completing. And also, it's always a good idea to ensure that the information you get back from the payment API, you echo that in your site as well. So display that back to the user. And when you send them, like a receipt email or an invoice email, you may also use the Google Pay logo there to let them know that that was the payment method they used. And we also say, use only the official button styles and logo assets in your app. We'll provide links to the documentation where you can find all this guidance and these assets. Okay, now let's actually dive into a little bit of code and look at the implementation on web. The first thing you want to do is load the Google Pay JavaScript client library. This is pretty straightforward. If you've used any of our APIs before, then you'll be used to this pattern as well. You specify the Pay.js library, and then when that's done, you can specify a callback for onload, which is where you'll initialize the API. Inside of here, you can see that we are creating a payment client. Let me just go back a minute because that's a little bit corrupted on the screen. We are creating a payment client. So you can see here that we're passing through the environment test. This is the only parameter to the creation of the client at the moment. So it's either test or it's production. Then you make the API call is ready to pay. Now what this is doing is taking the payment methods and the transaction information that you have provided and telling you if that browser is ready to make that payment. This is supported as of June across Google Chrome, Safari, and Firefox, and this is on desktop and mobile. So these are your options for the Google Pay button. We have both long and short versions and black and white versions. So we recommend to use the black button on a light background and use the white button on a dark background. Okay. Now, this is an example of the data that you're actually passing through when you're setting up the API. You specify the types of cards that you want to accept. You can either accept generic cards, so this is much like autofill that you would receive in the browser, or you can accept a tokenized card. So this is the standard tokenized card that is saved within Google Pay. You can then also specify the card networks that you accept. So you can see here, American Express, Discover, MasterCard, and so on. And then below, you specify the tokenization parameters for how you're going to process this. So hopefully, or in the majority of cases, you'll be using a payment gateway. You can see here, I'm just using the example one, but on the site, you'll see the supported gateways such as WorldPay, Stripe, and so on. We also have a direct method here, where we will return the details to you, and you are responsible for decrypting those, passing those on to your payment processor. And this also means that you're responsible for the PCI compliance on that side as well. Now, finally, you're going to add the transaction info to that request as well. You can see here that I've specified a final status, but you can also have a non-final status here if you don't actually know what the price is going to be. Now, this could be for a number of reasons, because as I said, you can also request the shipping address from Google Pay. And once you get the user's shipping address, that might affect the final price that you need to charge them. So once you've done this, it's always important to make sure that you display that updated version, the updated final total to the user before you actually complete the payment. Okay, and this is the final bit. When you get that response back from the Google Pay API, it will include a payment method token inside of there, and that is what you are passing on to your processor library to make that actual payment. Okay, so with that done, we are going to go into a live demo without any safety net or anything. So let's see how this goes. So I'm just going to stop screen sharing for a moment so I can switch over to the demo. Okay. So actually, if you just give me 1 sec, because I need to reset the demo for you so that it's makes a bit more sense than just showing you the finished item at the end. In the meantime, while you're waiting for me to mess around, this is a good point to get together any questions that you might have and start putting them in the chat so that we can answer those in a little bit. Oh, another interesting point on this one as well is what I wanted to do in this demo was show you this on an actual phone, but conveniently, when you see the Google Pay UI on a phone, this is actually marked as private or sensitive inside of Android, which means that you're prevented from screen sharing it, which is a very good feature, but it does make it a little harder to demo for you. So since on the live stream, you are no doubt on your phone at the moment anyway, you can actually just follow this link to go take a look at the demo on your phone while we go. So let me open up the screen sharing again. Okay, so I've got a demo here, which I'm just using Glitch to host so that I can show you the changes fairly quickly. So if I jump in to start with, if I go up the top, you can see that all I've got here is an empty div, which is where we are going to put our Google Pay button. So if we go right back down to the bottom again, the first thing I'm going to do is import the library. So like you can see, it's the pay.js file there. And my callback is going to be on Google Pay loaded. So let's make sure that we actually have that method available. And just to reiterate as well, what I'm doing is I'm going through the tutorial that we have available on the site. So after this, you can actually go along to the tutorial, and this is exactly the same code that I'm using there. So you can see in here, the first thing I'm doing is getting the payments client. And I need to do this a couple times, so we've actually wrapped this up in a function of its own for here. So let's uncomment that so we can take a look. So you can see it's the Google Payments client. So we're calling the library that we've just imported. And as you can see, I'm asking for the test environment. So just in case you're worried about clicking the button when you're playing along at home, I'm not going to be charging you any money for this demo. Okay, so let's take a look at what we've got over here and make sure we've done it right. Okay, so you can see that what's happening is inside of here, just in my console, I've just got a response result equals true. And that's because what I'm doing is I've got the payment client, and I'm calling that isReadyToPay method. So you can see in here, I'm passing through the allowed payments parameter. Let me show you the allowed payment methods, which I've saved up the top. So for allowed payment methods, I've said I accept both card and tokenized card. So that means that we're pretty likely to be ready to pay on one of these methods. So let's jump back down again. Now, is ready to pay is returning a promise. And we use the then keyword to resolve that promise. And inside of there, we're getting a response. And the response is what we're examining, the result inside of the response. If it's true, we know we're ready to pay. We're good to go ahead and show the button. So let's do that. I've wrapped that up in the Add Google Pay button, which I'm going to open up here. So you can see here again, just calling Get Google Payments Client, and then Create Button, which unsurprisingly is going to create a button for us. The primary thing on that is we need an onClick handler. So I've got that just up here. Let's uncomment that. I'm just going to keep it empty at the moment, just so we've got a function that it can call. And you can do some configuration on the button. So let's just verify that we're actually showing the button first. So there we go. We've got a short black button there. But like you can see, I can go in and I can change this to long and white here. Refresh that, and we've got the longer white version. But if you were paying attention during the slides, we said that this is against the design guidelines. So we're going to change that back to be short and dark to match our light background. And you can see here as well that the create button method is just returning a button element for us, which I'm just appending to the container element that we created earlier on. So let's just refresh to ensure that that's working. There we go. Okay, the other thing that we want to do as well, alongside creating our button, is just kind of warm up the API as well, so that it's going to be super quick when the user actually taps on it. So we can actually prefetch some of that information from the API. So I've wrapped that up in my prefetch function up here. Let me just show you that. So what I'm doing is I'm getting my payment data configuration, which I've wrapped up in this little function here. Now, effectively, this is the configuration for your site. So you can see my merchant ID, you can see the tokenization parameters, which are specific to your network. So if I jump up here, tokenization type as payment gateway, could also be direct. You can see in here, I've got example, a merchant ID. Now, each of the gateways accept their own set of parameters here, so you'll do something different depending on the configuration. I also pass in my allowed payment methods again, and the allowed card networks. And you can see here as well, I'm actually requesting some additional information. I'm going to comment this out for now so we can see a basic request first, and then we'll see how that changes as we make some calls. Okay, and so with that in place, even though we're prefetching, we do need a transaction attached to that, but we're basically just saying we don't currently know what it is. It's going to be in pounds. We get the client again, and we just say prefetch the payment data. That's warming everything up for us. So let's just hop back over to our demo and make sure everything is still working, which it is. So we've got our button, but as you can see, if I tap it, nothing happens at the moment because we've just got that empty callback. So let's actually go ahead and respond to that tap. So over here, I'm going to get that payment data configuration again. So that's the same thing I got before, including my tokenization parameters, my payment method, and so on. But this time, I'm actually going to add the real transaction info to it. So you can see I've saved some transaction info up here. In this case, I'm saying it's final, and I'm setting a total price. This is basically you go and get the contents of your cart and pass this through to the transaction. Okay, so now I've got that, I can call the load payment data method. And this is what is going to trigger the Google Pay UI for the user. And that's another promise. So when the user completes that, either they accept it or they cancel it, then the promise is going to resolve. And we're going to get the payment data back for us to process. Now, in the process payment method, since this is a little demo, you can see that I'm not doing very much at all. All I'm doing is taking the payment data, and I'm just logging that to the console. So now that we've got all that together, let's take a look at what that looks like. This is the moment of truth. I press pay. You can see the Google Pay UI popping up. If you're playing along on web, you should see something very similar happen here. And you can see that because I already have a payment method saved, that this is appearing in here. If I didn't have a payment method saved already, then I'd get the Insight UI to actually add a new card and save that as well. So I'm going to say continue here and make the payment. And you can see the response that I'm just logging that I get back. That has the card info class. This is just for display purposes, so you can show this back to the user to confirm the payment method and the transaction that they made. And then you can also see the payment method token here. And this is the actual tokenization, the token that comes back, which is what you are going to pass to your processor to make that payment. Okay, hopefully that was pretty straightforward and you've been following along. So let's take a look at what happens if we ask for a bit more information in there as well. So if I say ask for email required, then we just take a look at the data that we've got there currently, which is our card info and payment method. If I refresh now and I press pay and continue, you can see in here that now my email address has been captured and passed back in the response as well. And likewise, I can keep going. I can ask for a shipping address. And if I refresh and pay, you can see that now the UI has changed to show me my address selection. I can either select from multiple addresses or I can add a new one. And if I just do continue inside of there, I come back and now I've got a shipping address added in there. If you take a look through at the documentation, you'll see that there are actually a number of things you can ask for. You can ask for phone number, you can ask for billing address as well. Those will all come back in exactly the same format. Okay, so with that, we've done our demo. That will remain live for a little bit, so you can continue to play with that or grab the glitch link and remix it if you want. And now we're on to the Q&A. So Tony, we're going to hand over to you to answer a few of these and then go back and forth between all of us.
Great, thank you so much, Rowan, for a great presentation. So yes, so it seems that we do have a few questions here, and so I'm going to just read around and try to answer. So folks, if you have any questions, please feel free to send that to our way. So the first question that we got is so somebody asked if there is a discussion forum for Google Pay API. So the short answer is no. Currently, we don't have such forum, but then probably in the future we're going to have one. But then we have a very good development documentation website where there's also a form for you to submit questions to us. And so if you run into any problem, try to integrate in Google Pay to your existing solution, you can just also through our dev site submit question to it, and we'll try to answer, get that back to you as soon as possible. Okay. And the second questions that we receive is somebody asked if can you call is ready to pay even without having applied to production access? So he giving us a context here, says that I would like to check to see how many of our users could benefit from using Google API. That's a great question. So as you can see, Rowan just showed us a demo without even having a production access. So you can use you can connect to the test environment, and then from there you can call the is ready to pay API. So in order to connect to our production environment, you have to have apply for production access first. But then you still can use is ready to pay by connecting to the test environment. So yeah.
And I think a quick note on that as well, Tony, is you will notice if you tried the demo on a mobile device, if you actually walk through and bring up the payment sheet, it does provide a little disclaimer saying that this is not a trusted application for you as well. So users will have an indication that they are in a test environment and this is not a real checkout.
Exactly. And also when you are connecting to the test environment, you can only the payment token that you return will be a kind of like a test token. So you won't be able to pass that token to your payment gateway processor to process that. So only when you have a production environment access, then Google Pay will return a valid production payment token for you to pass that to your payment processor. Yeah. And the next question that we got is somebody asked if this work on any operating system. So earlier, Rowan already mentioned that we support all the major browser on the desktop and mobile devices. So so the question is is a yes. So because it's browser dependent when we're talking about web. So it support Windows, Mac, Linux. So as long as with the browser is supported by Google Pay, then you shouldn't have any problem. So on the mobile side, we currently Google Pay API only support Android. So no iOS at the moment yet. And we got another question here, which is can payment detail be saved from Google Pay to your own backend system? For example, if a user check out with Google Pay, can their card details, for example, then be saved for future use in that user account? That's a very good question. So if you are using a gateway integration, meaning that the payment gateway that you are using is support Google Pay. The payment token returned by Google Pay only has a expiration date of about 7 days. So that's basically that token can only be will expire after 7 days. So you cannot really save that and use it beyond the 7 days. Now, if, for example, if we want to do something like a recurrent payment, is it possible? But then that is outside of Google Pay already. So you will have to work with your payment processor to handle that because Google Pay will return a payment method back to you. And then, you will, according, what will your payment processor, we're using their API to do a recurring payment. Now, if another case is, if your payment gateway doesn't support Google Pay, you still can use Google Pay, but then the integration would be a little bit more involved. As we mentioned earlier, now when you use Google Pay, you have to pass the direct. There's a parameter called tokenization time. You have to tell that, okay, it's a direct, meaning that you have to implement the description of the payment data payload that returned back to you in a PCI compliant environment. From there, you will see, then once you decrypt that payment data, you can see the credit card information, right? The whole credit card number, the expiration date, and then all those information. And from there, you can, save that and process it for your recurring payment. All right, so moving on to the next questions. We have plenty of questions, very good questions. So the next one is somebody asked if they want to do A/B testing first before rolling out to other user. Do I have to do anything different than the tutorial suggests? I would say no, because so for A/B testing now you have to design which subset of user would be using Google Pay API. Basically, if this user, whatever criteria that you design, you will show that Google Pay button. For the people that you don't want them to use Google Pay API, then you just don't show that buttons. That's, yeah. And, yeah.
The page that details all of the payment gateways that are currently supporting Google Pay? And the answer is yes. Yes, there is. You go into the payments documentation, scroll down a little bit, and you will see the full list of processes that are supported. And hopefully that will be a growing list over time as well. The next one, this is a good one. Tony, I think that I might actually have to bounce this to you. Is it possible to change the language of the button text?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes. So it is possible. So I think right now we are starting rolling out like 6 or 7 different languages. So when you call that create button functions in the JavaScript library, it would automatically detect what language tool that it can use, and then it will localize that. So instead of, like, for example, if a person's is, let's say, calling Google, is your customer is doing that transaction in Germany, for example, and then the Google Pay API will be able to detect that what browser, what localization language they are using, and then automatically switch the language to German instead of using English on that buttons. So yeah, it's possible. So that is handled by the API automatically.
You should be able to try that out on the demo. If you switch your browser's language, you should see if the button actually picks up that language change. There was another question here that is there an option for the customer to use the saved address in the account that will overwrite the existing address on the web shop? And if yes, is there any address check or validation planned? So what I would say here is this is actually down to your implementation. So you're going to request those transaction details from Google Pay. Those are going to come back to you, and it's up to you whether you decide to present that to the user to say, would you like to make this your default address? Would you like to save this as an address in your account on the shop? The other question was about validation on there as well. We do some validation, but like with all of these things, anything that's coming back from a third party, always validate it yourself as well. Don't just always assume that we've done the right thing. The other thing that I would double check here is you should also be able to, you can request the billing address, not just the shipping address. So on that, the billing address is obviously linked to the card. So that's a bit stricter in terms of validation that's happened on that.
Right, and also want to just elaborate a little bit on the address validation too. So you know, when you making the call to Google API, you can set that, okay, request shipping address. And even though Google on the pop-up chooser, the payment method pop-up chooser, when you ask for the user, for your customer to enter a shipping address, it does not like validate the address, but then when they entering the address, the Google API would use the Google Map API to make the address entry much faster, much quicker, and and so that help the user enter a a correct address easier.
And one of the other things we didn't cover, but you can look at in the API is you can set the country codes that you want to accept. But for example, if you are asking for a shipping address and say it's you're in a very large country and you don't ship everywhere, you are going to have to do that validation as well. When the shipping address comes back, you need to ensure that you can actually ship to that location. If you can't, you're going to need to bounce the user back and have them either cancel the transaction or run through it again to select a different address. The next question was, the whole demo was presented as a front-end integration. So is there a way to implement calls in the back-end with PHP instead of JavaScript as an example? So not as far as I know, we don't have like a server-side REST API for this because you're relying on accessing the user's information. So obviously that's quite privacy sensitive. It's linked to their Google account in the browser, hence the front-end nature of this. But at the same time, there is nothing, say, limiting this just to being like a fully single-page app or anything. If you're doing server-side rendering, this kind of JavaScript is going to work in exactly the same way as most of the other payment providers would work for you there.
Great. So our next question is somebody asking us for the link to the documentation. So at the end of the presentation deck here, we're going to give you a link that point to our development documentation website. If you just Google Google Pay API, and then you will see that right away pops up on the top of the search result.
I've just clicked next on the slides as well, so you should have those links in front of you.
Great, thank you, Robin. And the next question is a very good question. Somebody asked how the refund work and or some other transaction, all the operation works, right? So that is outside of Google Pay already. The Google Pay API, the Google Pay API will return you the payment method. So once you get that payment method, then you will just process, use that payment method to continue with the buy flow, right? Charging the customer, doing the and then later on capturing the payment after the whatever the thing that your customer bought is shifted. And now for refund, you are going to use that would be be depend on your payment your payment gateways depending on the API that they use. So I would say there shouldn't be any changes on the existing way that your system is working with handling with regard to handling of the refunds. The next questions that we receive is, what is the process flow when 3D secure check is requested by the bank? Are there any example process flow documented? So that's a very good question. So we don't the process flow in terms on the Google Pay API is the same. But then there's on the development documentation, there's some additional parameters that you will have to pass. Yeah, so if you can check that the documentation for more detailed information on that. And yes, so we got another questions, which is, are you able to change the value of the transaction? For example, adding an optional delivering charge. Yes, so you can change that after you receive the payment methods back from the Google Pay. But then remember during the demo, Rowan showed us that when you make that payment data request, there's a parameter for the price status that you pass to Google Pay. So if you know that the final amount of the transaction will be changed depending on the shipping address, because the sales tax or the shipping cost we get it depending on we change, then you would, instead of passing final, you can pass unknown status or some other value to tell that the total amount would change. But then we do recommend you to show the total amounts before your customer confirm the order. All right, so we have another question here which said from calling is ready to pay but not doing any payment. Let's say we have a 10,000 customer. I want to find out how many of them could benefit from Google Pay API. Will they see us calling these functions? So when you call is ready to pay, there's no UI, there's no pop-up that we show the user that you're calling it. So so yes, so the short answer is no. The end user won't see that you are calling is ready to pay. Yeah.
I will say though, if you take a look at the demo, if you open up the Google console and say comment out the actual payment result, you can see the calls that are being made when you load the API and when you load ready to pay. And obviously, if you're adding that to your site, then anyone looking at the developer console will be able to see the calls that are being made as well.
Right, exactly. All right, so we have the follow-up questions from the question that we just answered. So does Google Pay API actually do the payments, or it can also be used to just request payment info and we handle the payment? So the answer is Google Pay API doesn't do if you say by saying that do the actual payment, you mean capturing and doing the resettlement. So if you're referring to that part of the transaction, so the answer is no. Google Pay API doesn't do that. Google API only return the payment information back from to you, and then you will have to handle all those payment transactions. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? I think that's a very good question.
I think that brings us up to the end, unless we've got any final pieces. We're looking at the live stream here while it just catches up so we can see if there are any last questions before we go. But no, hopefully we've explained everything to you. So thank you very much to Tony for joining us early in the morning in New York. And thank you to Natasha for really wrangling the live stream to get the questions in front of us as well. And thank you to Dom for the expert camera control. Thank you to Chan for being the moral support here as well. We have recorded all of this, so this recording will be made available. So if you need to share this or reference back to anything, and of course the links here for the documentation and for the sample as well. So with that, thank you very much, and we hope to hear more feedback from you. Bye-bye.